give maybe one more minute.
Okay, and I've got my my slide deck open in case we need to switch to it, and I have your page open as well. So we should be in good shape.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay. And oh, let me silence Slack.
Okay, it looks like got a good amount of people. We got 23 people in, so could probably just start with some housekeeping. I think so. We're going to hold questions to the end of the presentation. This training should be about an hour, maybe a little more. So I think we held 2 hours on everyone's calendars. So just to know what to expect there. And then everyone just please mute yourself for the presentation. And then lastly, we're recording this presentation just to share with those who could not join us. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And
awesome. Thank you, Kirsten, for kicking us off. I'm going to give a little bit of background for everybody on the call today. I'm Jenny Schiavone. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the city. Can you go to our next slide, Kirsten, and I'll do a quick introduction of our team. So Galina Tesfaye is our marketing and brand manager. And I think we getting some feedback there. Kirsten Arnold is our digital marketing strategist. She kicked us off today and got this scheduled. And then Robert DeRoque is our marketing coordinator. We are all part of the team that represents Denver Marketing and Media Services. We have several sort of we have a lot in our portfolio at Denver Marketing and Media Services, but one of the things that we oversee is the city's global social media presence, which includes city agencies and department pages, as well as divisions and offices, programs, events, and venues. We also provide oversight and guidance on best practices for social media. And then we're the governing entity around Denver's citywide social media policy and guidelines. I should also add into there that we don't do that in a vacuum. We work closely with the Information Governance Committee, which if you're familiar with them, you'll know that that committee consists of representatives from all across the city, and it's where all of our technology systems that have to do with any sort of information gathering or maintaining of information, kind of the policies all get vetted through that entity in the city.
Can you just clarify if City Council has a representative on that body?
Absolutely. I don't believe they do. I could be wrong. I will double check. I should also point out that though we in DMMS oversee and with the help from the IGC oversee the citywide policy, there are individual policies dealing with social media at many department and agency levels, including City Council. We know you guys have your own social media policy. So the citywide policy is more of the templated guidance, and then from there, various like department level, or in your case, the city attorney's office representative for City Council works to take that policy and kind of edit it and create something that's more workable for the specific use case that you have. And I will, Councilwoman, I will go back to the IGC and find out if there's a representative from City Council on that body. Okay, so a little bit more background on kind of how DMMS and Technology Services got into this position of having some governance around social media. Back in, I believe it was 2013, there was an audit coming from the auditor's office on how the city approaches social media, what kind of guardrails we have in place, that sort of thing. And the audit findings showed that we did not have a comprehensive social media strategy or governance structure within the city. There wasn't a central oversight or a central department providing oversight or guidance on the best practices. We also, it was found that we had a lack of, inventory of our social media accounts across the city and the folks who administer those accounts or do the day-to-day social media managing. There were also we didn't have any administrative redundancies, meaning that in a lot of cases, because we didn't have a list or inventory of accounts and the administrators, somebody would leave the city and then a department or a program or an initiative wouldn't have the account credentials for that page any longer. So there was no, way to transfer and transition pages from employee to employee during turnover. The audit also found that there is some need for agency autonomy, which is where we have, the flexibility to have department level or city council level, for example, social media policies that are better suited to your needs. And that we also didn't have a real clear way to track our social media efforts and whether they were successful or not. There was also no guidance on best practices, as I mentioned, or agency-specific trainings to really kind of help, with the quick evolution of social media over the years and continuing now into today, that we didn't have kind of a guru or a team that was staying on top of the trends and able to then disseminate trainings and guidance to the agency level. So keeping that in mind, where are we today? In 2013, when this audit 2013 or 15, I cannot remember which year it was, but when this audit was done, we didn't have our citywide marketing team was not a truly kind of centralized city service organization. So since then, we have moved or kind of evolved, I guess, what marketing and media services is all about. And we are now a division of technology services. And under that umbrella, as I mentioned, we have several things in our portfolio. One is this, kind of citywide oversight and guidance for social media. Another is the strategic marketing campaign work that we do from a citywide perspective and branding. We also have the formerly known as Denver Media Services, which is our video production entity, Denver 8 TV. All of that operation is part of marketing and media services now, so that we're joined at the hip. And so is 311 to complete that circle of life that you have from a marketing and engagement perspective, where you really need to have a close touch point from a customer service perspective to not only make sure that all of the functions that customer service serves is accurate and timely, but also so that we can use the questions, the complaints, the challenges that residents experience coming into 311. We can take that and transition those issues into marketing and communication campaigns. So with that as kind of a background, oh, sorry, can you go back, Kirsten?
Oh, yeah. Oop.
With that as kind of a background, we have now completed a social media audit and inventory, and have also created more robust, or we're working on more robust, I should say, digital media policies, which includes updating our citywide social media policy and looking at things that we do need to create down the line, like maybe an email marketing policy, things that fall into that digital marketing space. We've also completed a social media playbook, which is really where the guidelines and best practices come into play. And the playbook is meant to be more of a fluid document or playbook. It's more than a document that continues to evolve over the course of a year as new best practices come in line. And then another thing that we've taken on is ongoing brand training, brand 101 training, we call it, and social media work groups and workshops which we engage city agencies in. And now this is our first effort here at holding a onboarding specifically for Nextdoor for our elected officials. But I think this is something we'd like to be able to do more as we have, more and more evolution in the space and more information and guidance to share with all of the players within the city, particularly when it comes to outreach and engagement in the digital space. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten Arnold.
Thanks, Jenny. So this is just kind of to do a plug. Just a reminder to please refer back to your office's social media policy for more detailed guidance and best practices. Most offices, I know City Council has their own social media policies, and it's likely that many other elected offices do as well. So please just refer back to those policies for a refresher. Specifically, these points are kind of the most important. The terms of use, comments policy, record retention, and public records requests, and how your office will handle those, and then professional use and personal use. And if your office does not have a policy, our department does have a citywide social media policy. It was last updated in 2014, and we're currently in the process of updating it, but we can provide some guidance if need be, if you don't have some of those policies in place. But just wanted to do a plug for that before we got started. And I know Nextdoor, they have some of their own policies as well that they'll be going through with the platform. Okay, so the city of Denver, currently on Nextdoor, we have more than 260,000 residents using the platform in 184 neighborhoods. And what I love about Nextdoor is that we're reaching actual Denver residents, and most often these residents are some of our more engaged community members. Currently, we have quite a few city agencies and departments using the platform to inform, educate, and activate our residents to take high action value in their communities. And we use the platform to engage with residents at a neighborhood level and target them geographically. We use it to seek input and educate and gather situational awareness. And we're really challenging our agencies and departments to think and communicate like a community organizer. So telling people what's happening in their neighborhood, what the city is doing about it, and how they can get involved and help. And here, this is just kind of a breakdown of how our current Nextdoor for public agencies account environment is set up. So we have the umbrella City of Denver account, and within that we have various city agencies and departments who have accounts and are communicating information across the city. The Denver Marketing and Media Services digital marketing team, we're responsible for administering the account, and we're tracking results, we're providing guidance, and as Jenny mentioned earlier, our team governs our citywide social media policy and guidelines and ensures that our city agencies and departments using the platform are following those guidelines. And then we have quite a few city agencies and departments that are currently using it. They're more public-facing agencies and the agencies that regularly engage with the public. So for instance, we have Community Planning and Development, we have Human Services, the Office of Emergency Management, Parks and Recreation, Public Health and Environment, and the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure. And really, we're relying on these departments to be the subject matter experts in their areas. Specifically, they gear their communications around planning, community engagement, educating residents on programs and services that serve their community. And then from the Denver Marketing Media Services team, we retain ownership of the account in 2018. And prior to that, we had a handful of city agencies using the platform in some capacity, but there wasn't really a citywide strategy or any guardrails in place. So since then, we've worked with our city agencies and departments to put together a strategy and best practices of how we wanted to use the platform. Our team, we will typically post content that is, it provides a more high level news and information with a citywide impact. So it's connecting resources across multiple agencies and departments. So for example, some of the content we've promoted more recently is like this 2020 census, the city's COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. More recently, we've partnered with the Clerk and Recorder's Office to help support election information with the 2020 general election. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the type of content our department is putting out there. Additionally, with that, we ask other agencies and departments when they're communicating more complex topics, or if it includes other agencies and departments, we ask that they consult with our office just so we can all work together on timing and a content strategy of the best way to get that out, just so that we're all working together and making sure there's no gaps in messaging. And then we're very excited to onboard our elected officials. It's going to be great to have that representation on the platform and in the community. So it will be a great tool to connect with your constituents and share using information in your official capacity. I'm not going to dive too deep into it just because we have a representative from Nextdoor here today, and he's going to really dive into some of those best practices for using the platform. And this is just for awareness, but in addition to the City of Denver account, we have DPD. They have their own public agency account as well. If you're using Nextdoor in your neighborhood, you've probably seen some posts from them, but they manage their own account and users, and they're really taking that public safety lead for the city. So just more for awareness there. So that's just kind of a quick rundown of our strategy from a city perspective. So now we're going to hand it off to Joseph Percelli, and he is with Nextdoor. He is their global public agency lead.
All right. Thanks, Kirsten. So hello, everybody, or I should say hello, neighbors. As Kirsten said, my name is Joseph Porcelli. And I just want to, before I jump into anything related to Nextdoor, say hi to Jenny, because Jenny, you and I spoke a couple of years ago. Hello, everybody else. But I actually have a great affinity for elected officials. Back in 2004, I was living in the city of Boston in a neighborhood called Jamaica Plain, and we had a lot of violence in my neighborhood. I just moved there. We had some gang issues. We had lots of people getting robbed, walking home from the metro. And I started organizing, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to do something and bring my neighbors together. But it was my city councilor, his name was John Tobin at the time, and my state representative, Jeffrey Sanchez. They came to this meeting I organized and were just so helpful in guiding me and providing support and pointing me in the right direction to get started, because they were the folks that were in my neighborhood, a part of the community. So I feel really honored to be here today. One, because I'm just grateful for the work you guys do, but I'm also super excited because what I didn't have back then and what they didn't have back then was Nextdoor. And you're very fortunate because the approach that Kirsten and Jenny and the team have put together is in fact the most thoughtful and thorough approach to involving elected officials in the entire country. And we're going to be modeling a lot of what they put together in other cities, because this really provides you with the support to be successful on the platform. And my goal today is to tell you just a little bit about Nextdoor. It's really important to understand like who we are at our core, and then how the government platform differs from the residential platform. And then I'm going to just share some best practices and some policies, and I'm going to give you just a quick overview of how to use it, which fortunately is very simple. So that's probably going to be the least amount of time that I'll spend. Kirsten, what is the time frame I have to work with here? Because I want to make sure I leave time for questions for everybody.
Yeah, we technically have 2 hours held. I don't think we're going to need that.
No,
much
not at
time.
all. All right, so I can do my thing, not rush, and then we'll have time for questions. So
yes. Perfect.
All right, cool. All right, so let's go ahead, and if you go to the next slide here, I want to talk about foundationally what Nextdoor is about. So we are the neighborhood hub, and if you go to the next slide, please, Kirsten. One back. All right, and really what the neighborhood hub means, and like how you wrap around yourself, or how you wrap your head around this, is like there's lots of different social networks out there, but Nextdoor connects neighbors that live near each other to each other. So it's all about proximity, right? And we believe that when those of us who live nearby are able to connect and communicate, everything is possible, right? Like you can create whatever you want for yourself in your neighborhood. And coming back to my story, in my early days in Boston when I started organizing, I wanted to make my neighborhood safer, but I also wanted to feel connected to my neighbors. And I also wanted to do things with them that was fun and kind. And because we created this network, and much of it was very manual at the beginning, these things were possible. So Nextdoor is trying to scale possibilities and kindness at a global level in neighborhoods everywhere. And I think that's really important to understand, because our primary mission and our purpose is to create neighborhoods that every neighbor can rely on. And the reason I spend so much time on this at the beginning is when you're thinking about using Nextdoor to communicate and better serve your neighborhoods, it's you have to understand like sort of the spirit and the culture of the platform. Nextdoor is not like a newsletter platform. It's not something you push information out. Now you can inform people about things that are going on, but this is really like a customer service, like neighborhood engagement platform with the goal to increase satisfaction and increase trust, right? It's that same level of care when you're in someone's living room. I often joke that I'm a recovering community organizer with post-community meeting stress disorder, right? Because I've been to so many community meetings. I wound up working for the Boston Police Department doing organizing in the city of Boston, right? But that level of care and intensity you bring to the community meetings, you can bring to Nextdoor, except instead of talking to 4 neighbors or 40 neighbors, you can talk to 400 neighbors or 4,000 neighbors, right? In some cases, depending on the size of your district, 40,000 neighbors, maybe more. And so I think it's just really important to understand that spirit. Okay, next slide, please, Kirsten. And one of the things that differentiates Nextdoor from other social platforms is that we're built on trust. Every single neighbor is a verified resident of their community. They can have a postcard sent to their house. And there's other ways they can verify. They also have to use their real name, and they have to abide by our community guidelines. So there's more structure built into the platform. And people appreciate that it's their real neighbors they're talking to. And Nextdoor is all about utility. Like people come to the platform to find out what's going on, to get referrals and recommendations and that kind of stuff. And it's super useful for them, right? And it's really built on what we call the power of local, coming back to proximity. And the app itself, if you're not using Nextdoor in your neighborhood, is really focused on all those things around you that make up the components of your community. And now, thanks to the work of this team, you can also be a part of that and have a voice and express what I actually have the strategy. Kirsten mentioned it earlier, think and communicate like a community organizer. The second component of that is to care out loud, to provide that level of service and as a reflection of your commitment to serving your community. All right, next slide, please, Kirsten. Yeah, sorry. So one of the things that makes Nextdoor like fun and real for me is like during lockdown, that's my daughter, by the way, Elizabeth, she somehow magically makes it into all of my presentations. But what I did is, we were all isolated, and what I wanted to create for myself and my community members was a way to have fun that was safe and get some exercise. So I created this group called Paddle Together. And now there's, I think, 80 or 90 neighbors, and we organize paddling. And all my other neighbors are organizing paddles too. So we go out, we get together, and we have fun. And so Nextdoor can be as simple as like getting a recommendation for, a roofer or somebody to fix your leaky faucet, or it can be about whatever you want to create. And I think one of the things I've learned over the years of organizing is it's like, in order to keep people together over time, there's got to be something for them in the different phases of kind of their needs or their lives. And Nextdoor really kind of supports all of that. Next slide, please. So lots of people are also organizing lots of things on Nextdoor, right? These are really hard times and lots of people need help. And so people are organizing to deliver groceries. In fact, we have a feature called the Help Map. It's on the residential side where you can ask for or offer help, right? And during the unrest, there was a neighbor in Nashville who was Black. He didn't feel comfortable walking in his neighborhood. He posted on Nextdoor, and this army of neighbors are like, we're going walking with you. That's not going to happen, and provided some support to this neighbor, right? So there's all these kinds of things. And we also partner with organizations like Walmart, where neighbors, they sponsored this groups thing where neighbors can organize to take care of other neighbors or do whatever they want to create, which is cool. Next slide, please. So I've given you a couple different examples. There's lots of reasons people come to Nextdoor. But when they're on Nextdoor, they actually stay for the community, right? It's important to feel that you belong or that you're heard and that you're valued. And that's something we strive for. We don't always get this right, and there's lots of work to still be done, but it's important that you understand sort of the core of the platform or the community. With that said, this sort of concludes what I wanted to talk about, the general part of Nextdoor, like the big part of the platform. But what we're going to transition to now is Nextdoor for public agencies, which is our free government interface, which you are all going to get access to if you don't have it already. So as I stated earlier, kind of bring to sort of close the loop, is this is really just about increasing satisfaction and trust, right? That's the end goal. And I really love this quote here by Mary Jo Flynn in Sacramento. Basically, it says, because Nextdoor members are so active, it's a great place for them to engage them. Yeah. This is the key thing. What are the actions? That's okay. The little kiddo there. Hi, kiddo. How you doing? What are the actions you want people to take, or what are the behaviors you want people to change? And I want to take a second and just stay on this, because earlier I said Nextdoor. You shouldn't think of Nextdoor as like a newsletter platform. Yes, you can inform, but you heard Jenny say educate and activate, right? Educate might be help people understand about a resource that's available to them, or activate them might be to show up and help, clean something up, or volunteer to do whatever it is that's going on, right? So that ties back to thinking and communicating like a community organizer. What is it you want people to know? What is it that you're doing that they should know about? And what actions do you want them to take, right? And I think because this is such a locally, the focus of Nextdoor is on serving residents in specific places, either your entire ward or district, whatever you guys call it, or specific neighborhoods, your success depends on how far you lean into that strategy. Next slide. So I've mentioned this before, but we are a neighborhood engagement platform. And one of the things that really matters to you is, as Kirsten said earlier, you're reaching your tax-paying residents, and you can geo-target your posts. So if you have a Facebook page or a Twitter profile, Twitter's awesome because it's very fast and you can sort of reach the media and do different stuff like that for the general audience. Facebook kind of helps you reach, a general audience as well, but Nextdoor helps you reach your residents in specific places. So if the trash isn't being picked up on one street, or there's a issue in another neighborhood and something else going on, 3 separate messages that are specifically relevant to those exact neighbors. And again, if you come back to the strategy of thinking and communicating like a community organizer, you will see real world results. So when you're thinking about communicating, don't just think about communicating for the sake of engagement. Think about why you're trying to drive that engagement. What is it that you want people to do or know? Next slide, please. So some key differentiators here. Some of you may be thinking like, oh my gosh, I've already got all these other tools. This is one more thing to do. And this is really important to understand. On Nextdoor, people don't have to subscribe to your posts. The audience is built in. So what that means is when you post on Nextdoor, every member in the geography where you send it, whether it's in your entire district or ward, or it's in a specific neighborhood, will have the ability to see your message, right? And so what that means is you don't have to spend a lot of time, earning your audience. Nextdoor grows organically very quickly. And so you can spend your time on doing thoughtful communications when you want to or need to. It's sort of opposite of Facebook, where the more you communicate, the more engagement they reward you with. We reward you on the quality of your engagement and how locally relevant it is, right? With that said, Nextdoor members also can't initiate conversations with you, and that is important because that preserves your capacity, right? It's like imagine you're going to a community meeting. You open the door, you walk into the room, you say what you're going to say, you take questions, you answer people, and then you can actually close the door when you're done, right? So you choose when you want to communicate, you choose for how long you want to take questions, and you choose to close the door. So you're in fact in control of what happens and when. So rather than feeling like you got to create all this content all the time, if you want to reach a lot of your residents in a specific place in your ward or district, think about posting on Nextdoor. The other important thing to understand here is that we don't expose who Nextdoor members are or what they're talking about to you. So this isn't a listening platform. This is a platform for you to proactively engage. And again, come back to that community meeting model. You have to open the door and make an announcement to get any input or feedback. And there's actually a really great way to do that is with Nextdoor polls, but I'll save that for a little bit later. Next slide, please. So just sort of recap, where does Nextdoor fit into the social media mix? It's where you reach lots of your residents in specific places, and you can expect to see double-digit engagement rates. Like if you look at the average engagement rate on like Facebook or say Twitter, it's like 1 to 3%. On Nextdoor, you'll find it's much higher. I want to pause here. Kirsten, I just want to see if there's any questions because I don't want to just keep going without taking anything. So I don't know how that works on Teams. Does somebody raise their hand or did we just let them speak up?
We can do it both ways. You can raise hands or just unmute yourself. Let's see. I see one. Amanda Sawyer, Councilmember Amanda Sawyer.
Hey, how are you guys? Thank you. Question about the agency area, right? So like for council members who are, we have defined areas. For some of us who are not at large council members who represent the entire city, is there a way to like when we get our agency accounts, will that be by address, by neighborhood? Will we set the area? Will the city set the area for us? Will it go out to the entire city? I guess I'm just trying to wrap my mind around like how do we do that in a way that works so that we're reaching our constituents and not blanketing, or spamming the entire city, I guess.
Thank you. Kirsten, do you want to take that or do you want me to respond?
I can take that. So currently how our environment is set up for city council members specifically, you'll have access to your district, so all the neighborhoods within your district. So following this presentation, there's some slides on it, but we'll be sending invitations to everyone who wants to opt in. And from there, you'll create your account. We have some screenshots too, so I think it will make a little more sense in some of our final slides. But very good question.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one other quick question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry to jump the gun on that one. And then, so like, for example, we run, so for District 5, we run out of a district mailbox, and then we each have our own email addresses. So when we set this up, is there a protocol you want us to do? Or do you care, I would prefer we run it out of our district mailbox. So
it isn't tied to a physical address. Nextdoor for public agencies is like a platform that sits on top of the residential platform. Okay. And because Kirsten and Jenny are administrators of it, they will send you an invite to your work email address, and they will assign you the rights to communicate just to the Nextdoor members in the Nextdoor neighborhoods within the boundaries of your district. So no personal information other than your name and like your picture, I'm assuming, that's all members will see. So it's not tied to an address or your home address.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it looks like we have another question from Council Member Debbie Ortega, if you want to.
Yes, thank you. So part of my question was asked about sort of process. So any of us who currently have a Nextdoor account, I think mine is connected to my address. So the only thing I see is what's in my neighborhood. I'm a citywide member. Would love to be able to have access to being able to share information. So, and I want to raise a specific situation. When we were in the beginning stages of COVID and trying to push out information, one of the things I was trying to do was survey who was doing what in which neighborhoods and trying to identify where we had gaps, and specifically around, which neighborhoods needed food that weren't getting food, so that we could figure out how to be more strategic with the efforts that we had in place to try to get the dollars and the resources out to communities in need, especially where language was oftentimes a barrier of them not knowing about what resources were available, as some of us were trying to push that out, in English. And so I guess two things. I want to know, I'm sorry, I'm filling up a pot of, let me just turn off my water here real quick.
No problem.
He was just getting ready to tip over. So I want to be able to have that ability to do that citywide communication around some of these kinds of things, so that, as you said, it's a platform to try to figure out how do we make things better for people in our communities. And for me, it's sharing information and making sure that when resources are available, people who need it the most are going to be able to get it and get it in their languages. And I know oftentimes that means we have to put the content, in the different languages so that it's reaching people. But so that's all part of what I'm trying to understand. When we learned that the mayor's office had access to the citywide connections, with the neighborhoods that were connected to Nextdoor, but we were never able to get anything pushed out to try to get the information that we were looking for and to make sure that we were getting the resources where they needed to be. So help me understand, and I don't know how much that sort of fits into the polls or surveys or whatever, we were trying to do that as well, since we didn't get connected to Nextdoor. But how would we use the platform in a situation like that? And then if you have one now and we want to go to having one citywide, do I have to remove the one I have to take advantage of one citywide?
Sure.
Lots of questions there. Sorry about that.
No, that's these are actually really great questions. Thank you. Kirsten, I'm going to make a go of this, and then I think there's some bigger process questions this raises, and I'll offer some suggestions, and then there may be a follow-up from you guys. Is that okay? Or would you like to respond first?
That's perfect.
Okay. So, where to start? So let's talk about, if you're using Nextdoor already in your neighborhood, you are welcome to continue using Nextdoor in your neighborhood as a private resident. You may not, according to our policies, use Nextdoor in your official capacity through the residential side, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is that we want that's why we have the government platform, and two, if you're using your government email address, which I actually don't believe any of you are, we checked that, because you can your email address on the residential side and the government side needs to be different, and so we've got that covered. The second thing is, so keep using Nextdoor as in your neighborhood as your regular, and do your regular neighboring stuff that you do. On the public agency side, your profile will be tied to your work email address, and you technically could do a poll if you wanted to find out like how people are doing. In fact, in the city of Boston, and Jenny and Kirsten, I'll send you some screenshots of this, is they're asking different questions of like, how do you intend to patronize restaurants, or do you intend to use Lyft and Uber? And they've been asking the same questions every month over the series of a couple months to map the trend lines. And what's really cool about the polling functionalities, you can actually download the poll results by service area, so by wards. You can see how each ward answers the question. And then to be even become more granular and specific to what the council member just asked, you can download the poll results by neighborhoods as well. So there's a couple ways you can do that. Now, with that said, from the process perspective, I think it needs to be a coordinated effort, right? If I don't know how many at large council members there are, but there's two. So
two, right.
So if one did a poll and then another did a poll, like that would be confusing to your residents.
Right.
So it might be good to do like I think it's the way that I would approach this is I would see there's conveners of the effort on behalf of council member A and B in the city of Denver. Tomorrow we're going to be posting a poll to assess, where the needs are across the city, right? And there'll be a series of questions. And with polls, you can only ask one question, and members can only give you one poll vote. So you'd want to be fairly thoughtful about that. And the polls, my recommendation is to use it not as direct evidence, but as indicators of need or sentiment or input or something along those lines. So I think we'd want to think about that a little bit. The other thing that you could do, like assuming you understand the need or assuming there is resources, this is an unrelated example, but it's fresh in my mind. In Oakland, California, the police department puts out screen captures of shot spotter when shots are fired on a map, and they post it in the different neighborhoods, so people in those neighborhoods could see where like the shot spotter things are going off. So I guess my point is a visualization of where like different food pantries are and resources that are there. And there's if you go to the U.S. Fire Administration, they use something called pictographs. And if you go to U.S. Fire Education and Outreach, they have these pictures that are actually consumable without words. They're just very directive, right? So you can have like an image of like a piece of bread and on a map, and someone who didn't necessarily speak English might understand that, right? Like, oh, this is where I can get, bread or food, something. Now, the majority of probably Nextdoor members in the city are going to be speaking English. The platform is not yet internationalized. So while the product is in English, you could communicate in Spanish or Vietnamese or whatever you want to communicate in. The product itself is still in English. We're working on that. But those are two things I think you could do. And I think I don't think this is very complicated, but I think if you want to use polls as a way to get an indicator of need based on different need types, that could provide some quick evidence for you to do just that.
So Joseph, just a quick follow-up question. Is the poll feature an automatic inclusion in what's available to elected leaders as we push?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's four types of posts. There's messages, polls, events, and emergency alerts. So emergency alerts, you guys, I think as elected officials should not do. That should come out of either city comms or whoever's putting on a crisis comm. That's like when life or property is threatened. And we're actually going to be deprecating our events functionality because you'll get more people eyeballs on like a virtual Zoom meeting or whatever it is by posting a regular message than an event. So that will be going away. And then the polls are great examples. And I'll send Kirsten, I don't know if I sent this to you, but I have this collection of awesome polls I've seen across the country. In fact, I just worked with Michigan Department of Health yesterday to create a poll asking people, have you downloaded the new COVID alert app? And they posted it, and they've gotten, 4,000 or 5,000 votes already in 24 hours, which is awesome. And that drives lots of people to download the app, right? Polls are a great way to get people to gather input, to educate folks, and to actually get them to take action. So like you could do a poll like, did you know that the food bank, did you know that our ward has 10 food banks? Here are the addresses. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Thanks. I'll check it out. Right. Whatever that is. It's a great way. Polls are the most engaging type of communication on Nextdoor.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. Can we move on here? Or do we have any more questions?
It looks like we have one more question from, Councilmember Chris Hines.
Yes, please go
Yep.
ahead. Mm. Mhm. 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 I appre- You're welcome. And I'm going to just turn that around too. And the credit goes to Kirsten and Jenny and the team that have done the work to make this possible for you folks. So um, make sure you thank them and give them a high five next time it's safe to do so. I want to make an unrelated comment. The second thing to know, and this is just important to understand, is that from an accessibility point of view, Nextdoor has made a lot of progress in the last couple of years to make the platform accessible in general. So I'm proud to share that with you. We still have a little more work to do, but we're learning about it and evolving all the time. So the second thing is, with Nextdoor for public agencies, I just want to make sure I'm clear, is that you will not be able to see what the members in the greater in your entire district are talking about. We don't surface that to you. So if you want to know what's going on, or you suspect there's a concern, or if a constituent contacts you and says, hey, did you see this? The answer is no, because Nextdoor doesn't give us access. But you can post into that neighborhood and be like, hey, neighbors, I heard X, Y, and Z. Here, I want to clarify like what some of these facts are here, but I want to make sure I get this right. Is there some context I'm missing? You can do that. The other thing, coming back to polls, is you can use polls to ask folks, like when you start posting, like, here are the top 5 things I think you would find useful on Nextdoor. Please take a moment and choose the option that's most relevant. Nextdoor will stack rank the results, and I will start by communicating these things to you, right? And so it's a great way to get feedback from your community and demonstrate that you're listening by changing your behavior or what you plan to communicate based on the input of your residents, which I think is very powerful.
Awesome, thank you. I try not to listen to my constituents, but occasionally it just happens anyway.
All right, off the record, I got you, no problem.
So I'm glad you mentioned the polls. So can we target messages to geography smaller than the district level, like neighborhood?
Yes.
Or even block?
The neighborhoods, yep.
Okay.
So if your district has 200 neighborhoods, you could post into 2 of those 200, or 5 of those 200, or 35 of those 200, whatever you'd like. And I'll show that in a couple of minutes when I get to that section, just how easy that is.
Great. Next, can we invite members to participate in external surveys or maybe external blog posts?
Yeah, absolutely, you can. But you should understand something that's very important. When you do that, there's a massive drop off. I see a lot of folks sometimes post like, here's our newsletter, and there's just a link to it. That's like the laziest thing in the world to do. Like, the drop off will be like 70 or 80% of the people that see that. So take a second. One of my other strategies is be respectful of people's intellects when you communicate. So be like, all right, neighbors, I've published my monthly newsletter. Here's the top 5 highlights of what I'll be discussing. If you have any questions, feel free to comment here and let me know. So it at least acknowledges like you're being thoughtful of their time. You're giving them like the cliff notes right there so they can quickly digest the most important points. And then they can go into detail in your newsletter if you want. And then they can comment with the questions on the platform. The other thing to think about is like if it's timely, talk about it now. Like post chunks of what might be in your newsletter, like one chunk a week or something like that, to engage your residents in the conversations. And the other thing too is if you're having like virtual meetings, post a recap of the virtual meeting on Nextdoor. Like here's the top couple things I talked about, a couple follow-up items I promise, and I will update everybody on what those follow-up items are here. If you do that, people are like, wow, this is really thoughtful. I really appreciate it because I couldn't make that meeting. I had another job, or I was like on 15 other Zoom meetings that day and I couldn't do just one more. Right. So meet people where they are, and that's on Nextdoor, and about information that's specific to their neighborhoods.
Totally a fair point. And I if I were an ambassador of Nextdoor, I would also encourage people to use Nextdoor more as opposed to having them go off the platform. I think one of the things you mentioned earlier, though, is the survey should be not be taken as gospel, so to speak, but more
indicator,
just kind of a guide of and so. We have multiple outreach efforts that's beyond just Nextdoor, and so we might want to survey people from Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, because we're working on our email mailing list, and so if we had a survey just in Nextdoor, then that would only be a subset of the ways we try to reach out to folks.
Yeah, and just a quick trick: you can do a survey on Nextdoor, and then do a screen capture of the survey results. You close the survey and it kind of tallies everything up for you. You could share that survey on Twitter. You could share that survey on Facebook. Or if you want to be super creative, like use a projector, put the survey on the wall behind you, and do a Facebook Live and talk about the survey. When you're done with your Facebook Live and your recap of the survey, you could take the URL of that Facebook Live video and post it on Nextdoor and be like, here's the Facebook Live of the survey results that we talked about with the Facebook community. If you guys have any other questions, let me know here. So you're using two strengths of two different platforms to engage two different audiences using the data set that you got on Nextdoor.
And I have one last question, and then I'll be done, at least for now. And this is a kind of a wonky or more technical type question. And I have a computer science degree, by the way, so I'm maybe too nerdy for some of the folks here. But if we drive members to, if we mention that there's a poll, are we able to attach data to that URL? Like, can we identify,
can you track like a UTM code to see where people are coming from? Like different sources?
And attach like, this is the neighborhood from which this person, or in which this person lives, or something like that?
Yeah, so you can download poll results by all your neighborhoods. So if there's those 200 neighborhoods and you do a poll and you click download poll results by neighborhoods, it'll show you the aggregate votes. It's like, it wouldn't say Joseph P voted. It would just say one vote from, I live in a neighborhood called Eastport, right? Or 20 votes from Eastport and 10 votes from Murray Hill, or whatever that is. You would see that. Our system isn't sophisticated enough to track sources of surveys. Like, we don't have a poll is a simple version of a survey, right? But we can't tell you if a Nextdoor member, if you tweeted about it on Twitter, and if that person filled out the poll on Nextdoor, if the original source was Twitter, it would just be that the person came from a specific neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. And I think Jenny has her hand up, Kirsten.
Yep, I think Jenny is our last hand.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to point out that there's a couple of good questions in the chat that I didn't want to lose sight of before we move on to another slide. Lisa Calderon asked how we're defining community organizer. And then there's another question from Christopher Lowell.
All right. Well, I originated that, so I'll tell you what I mean, and then you guys, Kirsten and Jenny, you can tell everybody. For me, a community organizer is just like a general term. My career started in organizing in Boston, and so for me, what that means is a community organizer thinks with their constituents' needs, aspirations, limitations, Like it thinks about the environment of the folks that we're serving, and so it's you're not trying to get people to do something for just for you. You're thinking about doing something honoring, respecting the needs and wants of what individuals that are coming to the table are bringing with them. So it's, I guess, a simple way of saying it's being thoughtful, and it's being inclusive, and it's thinking about the benefit for everyone, not just you. That's my explanation of it.
Thanks for providing your clarification. It actually comes from social justice and marginalized communities fighting to get access to unequal power structures. But it's good to know what you think you mean by it, because I think that there is a disconnect, oftentimes in Nextdoor chats, around that concept. So thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, I appreciate that context. Thank you very much. It's important to keep that in mind. For me, it's really just about a framework to get people. The problem I'm trying to solve from a Nextdoor perspective is a lot of folks just use the word push. They just want to push, and that doesn't really work on Nextdoor. You have to be thoughtful, and that's where I'm trying to get. And Jenny, was there another question?
Yes, Christopher Lowell, who is with our other at-large council member's office, wanted to know if we can expand a little bit more on how this would work for the at-large members. Would they have access to all neighborhoods? I think the question about interacting with one individual neighborhood was answered versus like an entire district. But is there a little bit more maybe that we could dig into on the at-large concept?
Yeah. I mean, I think this really comes down to your policy. If the counselors at large, they would it would logically make sense to me that they would either have access to everyone in the city or something else. I don't know. Where did you guys land on that?
Yes, that's where we landed.
Yep. So I think, Chris, for your question is, I think the one caution I always have is just because you can doesn't mean you should always. Right, because Nextdoor, in a way, like if you went to 100 community meetings tonight and told people about the same thing, about stuff going on around the city, and you kept doing that, they'd be like, oh man, Chris is here again. What's he going to tell us that may not be super relevant to us tonight? So if there's something that's super relevant, share it with the whole city, right? But people on Nextdoor want to hear about what's happening in their own neighborhood that affects them and their family, right? So I think it's just about the thoughtfulness of your communications and making sure that your communications are locally relevant.
Thank you. And I think, Joe, this is where you were going with anybody who has that like citywide access, that being thoughtful and planning out sort of like, do you want 2 at-large council members posting the same message across the entire city, or do you want to have it come from one plus maybe the mayor plus the auditor or something like that? But looking at the rest of the roles that have citywide access, which I think, Kirsten, correct me if I'm wrong, would also be clerk and recorder and the auditor, right?
Okay. Yes.
So kind of as internally as a city, making sure we're strategizing and connecting on that, so we don't overwhelm the message.
Yeah. Another way, there's 2 comments on that. One is, like, on Facebook, you each have let's just say everybody on this call has their own audience. It could be different people from all over, right? On Nextdoor, it's a shared database. So you have the entire city of all your 200 and however, or 300 and however thousand members. Like if I'm an at-large council member and I post, and then another at-large council member posts, it's the same database. It's the same people get the message. The other thing to think about too is that you have to be very thoughtful to manage the signal to noise ratio. Nextdoor is huge in Denver, and you're competing against, and another way to think about this is your content can compete against each other for people's attention. So it should be your best content, your most locally relevant content. And you should not do one post a day if you have citywide access. If you have citywide access, I would think maybe giving everybody that has access one citywide post a month or something like that. And I wouldn't post each month like, here's my newsletter with a quick link to it. I don't think that's going to go well. But I might say, like, here's an excerpt from my newsletter that I think everybody in the city would appreciate. If you'd like to get my full newsletter, here's a link to sign up. You kind of have to like slow it down and be more thoughtful.
Yeah, that's definitely how we handle our citywide account as well. We're really mindful about timing unless it's more targeted to those neighborhoods. So that's a very good point. Thank you.
All right, should we continue? I see we have one more question. I don't mind answering questions, so.
Yeah, it looks like we have 2 more questions. Stacy?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I think that we are going to have a city council, like as a body, access, and so that may be more appropriate when we need to reach the entire city, but that's something that we can talk through.
Yeah, that might be a good way to coordinate like the polls and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
And I just want to make sure that we're not going to be precluded. Stacy, whatever discussion we need to have, I know Councilwoman Kanish will want to weigh in on this as well, so that we're not precluded from being able to have that reach. Mm-hmm. I mean, we sparingly share information, but it's always pertinent information that neighborhoods really need and want, and as opposed to just, oh, here I am, I'm at this meeting, you all should know about it, that kind of thing. But so if we're going to have some policy, I want to weigh in on it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll coordinate on that, Councilwoman Ortega. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to interject.
No worries. Was there one more question, Kirsten?
Yes, one more. Melissa?
Yep. Hi. So I understand that we could post on Nextdoor and have the surrounding neighborhoods see it, but, and I don't know if I missed it, but is there a way where we can see updates of what other surrounding neighborhoods are posting? Like if we're posting for the Green Valley and Montbello, everyone can see it. We can see what they post on comment on our post. But if I'm seeing, if I want to see what people are posting to see what are the main areas of concern, I can only see Green Valley versus Montbello or vice versa. Is there a way where
it sounds like you're talking about using Nextdoor in your own neighborhood currently? With access to Nextdoor for public agencies, you will not be able to see what any member in any neighborhood is posting about. This allows you to like let's just say we're in a school and there's let's say there's 25 neighborhoods in your district. There's 25 rooms. You pop into the room, you open the door, you're like, hey, everybody, this is what I got to say. Let's have a conversation, so on and so forth. Close the door. But you can't listen. You can't hear what the members in all those classrooms or neighborhoods are saying. That's not possible through Nextdoor for public agencies.
So you don't see anything then?
You don't see anything, but you can ask questions. If you post in all your neighborhoods and be like, hey, everybody, like what I might do, you could post to individual neighborhoods and be like, hey folks, we're new to Nextdoor here. I just want to we want to get a sense of what are some of the you might start this with a poll, what are some of the ongoing, what are some of the priority issues you'd like us to work on for you, or what are your concerns, right?
So you're saying we don't see news feeds?
You don't see the news feed, but you can also, every time you post on Nextdoor, you can say if there's a particular issue you'd like our help with, you could just put this at the bottom of each of your posts. Please call our office at, or please email us at X, Y, and Z, right?
Got it. Okay.
My daughter's about to barge into my office. I'm just going to warn you all. We're trying to get her not to, but she's probably going to pop in and say hi. Okay, looks like there's one other question. Let's go for it.
Yep. Okay, Daisy?
Hi, I have a quick question. Is there a limit in terms of characters per post? Just because we have a large Spanish-speaking district, so if we're limiting council offices to 1 post a month, that'll be very difficult, at least in terms for our office.
Are you at large or are you a district council member?
District.
So we're not limiting you to 1 post a month. I was referring to at large city councilors, and I'm not making that policy. I'm just saying you for the at-large folks, you want to be thoughtful about what you communicate. It's like going to a community meeting. It lasts 4 hours, and people keep making announcements, and you don't care about it. Like that's where you're going to be careful. But for district counselors, you can post, I would say, like a couple times a week, assuming that the message is relevant to all of your members. And because, to answer the first part of your question, the people, you kind of have to get to the point pretty quickly and convince people to keep reading, right? So I wouldn't do like a 10-paragraph long post in English and then in Spanish first, English first. It can depend by, your familiarity with the neighborhood and the primary language speakers. I would break things up into more digestible bits over time than like, if you were only going to post one post a month, again, that's not the policy, and it's 10 pages long, I would do 10 smaller posts over the course of the month. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's no character limit.
There's no character limit.
Got it.
The other thing you can do too is you could, I think, just as we think about different people can consume information, like you can sort of break some things up, like with text, and you can do like some video stuff. Like if you have like a Facebook video or a YouTube video, or you can embed the video link and it renders in the platform. So you can have some key highlights in the message and then watch the video for more details. Like you could actually read your newsletter or talk about it. And so it makes it more consumable and interesting. And you could do the both for, English and Spanish or whether languages are spoken if you wanted to.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for the great questions, everybody. All right. Let's see here. Sure. Yes.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Hines. They were police districts in my city council district who told me that they've moved back to it, but they had completely abandoned Nextdoor as a platform because of this exact problem. I think this is a huge problem for this platform. When you create an account where we can communicate out, but we cannot see what other people are communicating about, it creates the perception that we are not being responsive. And the police department in my areas were getting so much backlash where they were saying, wait a second, you post and you tell us all this stuff, but when we post something and we're asking you a question, when we're trying to refer back to things, you don't ever show up, you don't ever answer it. And it's because it is designed by Nextdoor to be a one-way communication tool that unless we also then go and create our personal accounts, which then don't show us all of our neighborhoods, so create an inequity in which constituents can reach out to us, they are posting about us on Nextdoor. They're saying, hey, the stop sign is missing. I need help from my council member. And then they see us posting something and they think, oh, they must be able to see us, which you can only if you cheat the system and have personal accounts at enough addresses that you cover your neighborhoods. Nextdoor has created a situation where we can't have that level of access, which creates a serious problem for constituents thinking that they can communicate with us when they can't. And it got so bad for the police districts in the area that I represent that they decided to not use Nextdoor anymore, to put on all of their Nextdoor stuff. If you need to communicate with us and you have to use social media instead of calling, you have to use Facebook or Twitter or something where we can see you, because we can't see you. And if you're posting it and thinking we can see you, we can't. To me, I thought I was coming to this training because Nextdoor had changed that policy and we were going to have access as electeds to see what is going on, what is being posted for everyone who we represent. It appears that that is not the case. I think that's a huge problem. It has already proven to be a huge problem for our police districts. And I think it's honestly just a massive shortfall of this platform because it doesn't allow that. For whatever reason, Nextdoor thinks it's better for their neighbors. It is not better for their ability to communicate with us. So sorry, Councilman Hines, but that was the experience that I have had in my district with it.
Thank you for telling me your experience, and I've heard that before. It's not the first time we've heard this, and the balance for us has been sort of finding and managing the expectations that we set with our members, that only Nextdoor members in their neighborhood can see the messages that they elect to share with their immediate neighbors. With that said, I feel like we do need to come up with a solution where it manages the expectations of privacy that work for everyone. With that said, there's a couple things that are in place that clarify, and this is work we've done in the last year and a half, 2 years, where every time a post comes from an agency, it says this message it's a little line, I believe it says this message comes from a public agency. They can't see what you're talking about, or something along those. That's not the exact wordage, but it's something like that to manage that expectation. With that said, that's a great reminder that when you folks post on Nextdoor, you should periodically remind your community members that through the Nextdoor's government interface, we can't see who you are or what you're posting. If you need our services, you must call here or respond to this message, right? That's sort of the interim way that we recommend addressing that.
With due respect, it's so different than how anything else on the internet works that it isn't something that you can just put in. And you know, you've repeatedly made comments about being thoughtful about your posts and about, you know, limiting the amount of it. If every single post has to include a thing saying, hey, I can't see what you're talking about, it's not, people don't get that. They see you communicating on that platform in the same way that you communicate on Twitter or on Facebook, and then you can't see what they're saying back to you. It is to the point where I just don't believe that it is it's effective or responsible for, at least for me, to be using this platform in that way, because it creates a false sense and it sows more division. There's no other platform where somebody else is posting something and you can't communicate back with them on that platform. They see us. If they see us communicating on that, as the police department experienced firsthand, then they believe that is a two-way street, because that is with every platform. Maybe the other platforms, you have to friend them, you have to accept them so that you can have that two-way communication. But this one-way communication is unique to Nextdoor. It creates an untenable expectation and puts us in a really tough spot, because people are trying to communicate back with us. They want to communicate back with us, and your policies do not allow them to. And then they're mad at us for not responding. So, and just posting all of the time, hey, guess what? I just posted this, and it doesn't matter what you say or say back. I can't see it. One, sounds like government at its best saying, hey, I'm going to give you information, but don't care what you think about it. And two,
let me clarify one thing. Let me clarify one thing here. When you do post on Nextdoor for public agencies, you can see their comments to your post. I want to make sure you understand that. And in regards to all your other points, I appreciate you speaking passionately about this, and I will take this back to our product manager and share your input with the team to make sure they understand how this is impacting you. And I appreciate the word you chose used being untenably. I think you said untenably sustainable or something along those lines. I will bring that back to the team. We do have to move on. So if that's okay with you, we need to keep going with our presentation here so we don't run out of time.
Yeah, Joe, let me just jump in real quick and just say, I think this is what you pointed out here, Councilman Clark, and those of you who are also saying this has been your issue with the platform as well, is that we don't see Nextdoor as the only platform to be using for resident engagement and outreach. That it's just a new a new tool in kind of the suite of what we're building. And I think taking the limitations of the platform, or maybe limitations is the word for some folks. I think for us, we've kind of found that Nextdoor enables us to get in front of folks who are having very intimate neighborhood conversations rather than asking them to follow us. So what we're thinking of when we are looking at like our, just from a city and county of Denver perspective, is that Nextdoor is the tool that we'll be using to try to reach more people who maybe aren't following us on Facebook or Twitter, whereas Twitter and Facebook become more of that two-way dialogue kind of communication tool when somebody wants to engage with us in a social media platform. So I think there's kind of some different ways to approach it. It just requires probably a little more strategy to understand which tools are best for what when we're talking about that outreach piece. And Joe, I'm sorry, I know you need to move on to another topic.
No, that's important. I think this is an important conversation to have, so I appreciate that we got to address it together. All right, so let's move forward. So we're going to talk about some policies and guidelines and best practices next, and then I'm going to give you guys just a brief overview of how it works so you can see how it looks. I know we're about an hour and 20 minutes into this. This is getting to the point where if I'm in a training or a webinar, I'm about to doze off, so I'll try and be quick with this for you guys. Next slide, please. So this is just an outline here. This is general guidance that we provide folks. And I've touched on some of these earlier, but this is organized in what to communicate, inform, and educate. So let people know about your upcoming virtual meetings. And also really importantly, provide the recaps. I touched on this earlier, but not everybody's going to attend your meeting. Not everybody's going to read your newsletter. Keep them engaged by telling them, like, here's the recording to the meeting if you want to watch it. As I said earlier, here's the key points, and here's some things I got to follow up with you. I'll respond back on Nextdoor in a week or so, or when I find it out, to let you know, right? And then the other thing is, as you hear about questions and issues, address those on Nextdoor. Hey, I was talking to such and such, and this came up. Just want to let you guys know this is what we know about this, or what this is going on. And if there's like construction projects or different things that are happening, let people know. Coming back to Councilor Clark's point earlier, one of the frustrations we've heard across the board is there's misinformation or people don't have all the facts. If you have evidence that that's happening, post on Nextdoor and set the record straight. I think that's really important. One of the other things, coming back to the example of using the stop sign, if you want to go and help people fix stop sign, that's great. But one of the things you can also do is promote 311 in the apps, right? So part of what we want to do to sort of scale customer service is automate some of the things where the systems are working. So if you're addressing a stop sign thing for someone, obviously you're going to tell them in person, use the 311 app, but it might be good maybe in the city, from the counselor perspective, is you'd be like, hey, if you haven't seen, like, here's the report of all the 311 things that need to be fixed, right? Because not everybody goes and looks at that. So that's another way, promoting the systems and resources that are available to help solve those problems through the infrastructure that the city already has. And then coming to the activate part, it's really about, again, I think polls are a good way to do this here, or just, posting and asking what people's concerns are. But you can also gather input on like the budgeting process, for example, or if you're trying to develop a new policy, you can ask people, hey, what do you think about this? What are your feelings? And use Nextdoor to gather some input to inform what it is that you do. And let's go to the next slide, please. So there's there's a couple policies that we have, and Kirsten, we should make sure we email the elected officials policy and the community guidelines to everybody, just so that's really clear. But I sort of highlighted a couple of the key points here that I wanted to touch base on. So, this is an official city communication social media tool here, so you can't use it for political advertising or campaigning, right? And some other things that I want to call out is, please don't state what candidate or policy to vote for, nor your position on a candidate or a policy. That's really important to us. The other thing is, do not message about any of your campaign fundraisers, activities. I think you guys kind of know some of this already, at least these two bottom points, but the two top points are important to us as an organization in regards to our policies. Okay, let's go to the next page. And then, so this is kind of getting into some of the driving engagement on Nextdoor. And here's what we know works best based on our data. And we've done a bunch of research over the last couple of years here. Your subject line, which is similar to an email, like if you post on Facebook or Twitter, it doesn't distinguish the subject line from the message. On Nextdoor, there is. Keep it short and sweet. Tell people what's happening where. So construction on Maple Street. Super simple example of that, right? If somebody lives on Maple Street, they're going to want to know about the construction, right? And then when you communicate on Nextdoor, use the same tone that you talk to neighbors at a community meeting. You want to be neighborly and like as if you're speaking to something. Like the worst thing you can do on Nextdoor is in the subject line put press release and in the body put see attached and then upload a Word document. Absolutely, like maybe one or two people are going to see it, but that is not a good way to post. Photos on Nextdoor drive lots of engagement, as do videos, and there's some specific dimensions that are included here. I'm assuming you guys are going to send a copy of the presentation. This is also available in our help center, so you can see that. For the attachments, I've mentioned this before. Please do not attach Word documents. Nobody's going to open that. Most people are using Nextdoor either on the app or they're getting email from their mobile phones, so they're not going to be able to open a Word document. And if you have a PDF, that's fine, but it's better to save it as a PNG, which is an image type, so people can actually see it right on the app, because they may not have like a tool on their phone to open up a PDF, right? And then finally, measuring impact is important. We've talked about why are you communicating, not for the sake of engagement, but for moving things forward. And you can use what's called the content and engagement report, which is found on the metrics tab in the product. I'll show you that in just a second. That allows you to download all of your posts, comments to your posts, impressions and stuff. So you can, for example, see like how much you've engaged and get some good metrics to inform what you're doing or what works or what you may not want to do in the future. The other thing is you can download the poll results, which I've talked about already. Okay, next slide. This is kind of recapping some of the things that we've talked about earlier, and communicate with the aim to increase satisfaction or safety, satisfaction, and trust. Those are just sort of like the general things. And I appreciate the input that someone offered, and someone actually sent me a chat, and I looked for it and I couldn't find it. But communicating like a community organizer, what I mean there, and maybe what I put is I'll drop the word community and just put organizer. But the idea is being thoughtful about what it is that people want and what they need, and not just communicating for your sake, but for the sake of everybody else. I talked earlier about caring out loud, and what that really means is responding to questions, and those are the responses to the posts that you do. If all you do is post and you never answer questions, it's like going to a community meeting and never taking questions. People will kind of remember that. There's some value there, and you do have to manage your capacity, but to your ability, answering questions is really important. Respecting people's intellects. On Nextdoor, people want to have conversations with you. They don't want you to just push content at them, right? They want to have those conversations. And again, geo-target your communications so they're locally relevant. People want to know what's happening near them. The other thing is don't close. You do have the ability to close a conversation that's like shutting the door in the community meeting. You should not do that by default. Now, if things get off the rails or they're totally off topic, just like managing or facilitating a community meeting and managing it well, you do need to kind of close down conversations from time to time. You can do that, but please don't do that by default. And then we've talked about this a ton, but use polls to seek input, to educate, and to gather information or awareness about what's happening. All right, next slide. All right, so here I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and I'm going to show you some of the basics of how to use Nextdoor. Can I share, Kirsten?
Yes, let me turn mine off. Okay, do you see the share option?
No, it just minimized my screen. Hold on 1 second. Are you seeing my screen?
I do, yeah.
Do you see Google... City of Denver?
I'm seeing a Google sheet.
No, it's sharing the wrong screen. Let me try this again. Open sharing tray. Okay, here we go. Now do you see the City of Denver?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So each of you will get a user profile. So I've logged in as Kristen, and your user profile is basically your picture, your name, your title, and this is so think of it this way. You are actually, a better way to call this is an author profile. There is a page and there are multiple authors on the page. So for example, if I click the directory here, these are all the folks that have access to Nextdoor currently. You will be one of them and you will be assigned to the service area. So these are metrics here. So I think these are all the council districts. Is that correct, Kirsten, on the left-hand side here?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So if you're the council member for District 10, you will be able to reach 31,000 members. And since I'm here on the metrics tab, you can see how fast Nextdoor is growing every 30 days. So in the last 30 days, 3,300 members have joined in the city, and in District 10, it was 462 members, and that's 31% of households. So this gives you a sense of how many households are on Nextdoor. A household counts as one, but my wife and I, for example, would count as 2 members. To post on Nextdoor, it's really quite simple. You log into the page and you would click where it says post a message, event, poll, or emergency alert. And you would click on that link and it opens up this dialog box. It goes over the 4 types of messages. Again, what you folks are primarily going to use is message and a poll. So if I want to do a message, I choose, all my messages are primarily going to be general unless it's about crime or something that includes safety. You'll do safety. Lost and found is carried over from years ago and we haven't removed it yet, so just bear with us as we do that. So I'll choose safety and my subject line here. So the example I used earlier was construction on Maple Street. Okay, so neighbors, and then I would type in my message. I could click add a photo or video and I would click here and then go to, say, my desktop, grab a picture, click open, it would upload it and bring it into and create a little like picture icon here. Under choose audience, this is where I choose where the message goes. As Kristen, I have access to communicate to the entire city. So when you guys go on service areas, you're only going to be presented with one. So that will be just, so if I'm a council member in District 1, my only option would be to click 1. So I'm going over this because this could be a little confusing. You'll only see one, but if there's like sub areas in each district, I don't know if there are there, Kirsten, in Denver?
No, district and then obviously the neighborhoods within those districts.
Yeah, okay, so you're only going to see one option here under service areas. So if you do entire service area, that's everyone in your district. And if you chose specific service areas, you would only present it with one option. So essentially what that means, and this is a little confusing, which is why I'm spending time on it now, these 2 things will be the same for you. But coming back to the example here, construction on Maple Street, I'm sorry, I just went too fast there. I'm clicking on neighborhoods here. I'm selecting neighborhoods. What I can do is I type in the address. So I'm just going to Maple Street, Denver, Colorado. I'm hoping there's a Maple Street for my example. Denver, Colorado, West Maple Street. That's good enough. And so what this does, and it may not work because I'm not logged in a way that would post, it would zoom in and drop a little pin on the map. Actually, let me just try one thing here. I don't know if I'm right. I haven't tried this in a while, sorry. 1 West Maple Street, Denver. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure why this isn't working. I think it's because it's the way I've logged in. But essentially what it will do is we'll put a little pin on the map. And then from there, I can choose, a radius of, and this will select the Nextdoor member, the Nextdoor neighborhoods around that radius. Alternatively, I can zoom in using the zoom feature here. This is where it gets kind of cool. Click this, there's the hand, there's the little rectangle, and I can draw, like I want to reach all the Nextdoor members that live, I guess, here in Northfield. let go, and it will select that next door neighborhood. So it selected the next door, the Northfield neighborhood. Now, if I wanted to expand this, I could draw a larger polygon here, and it will select those next door neighborhoods. Alternatively, I could just sort of click around using the hand. Actually, is this still in Denver up here? It might just be the way I'm logged in. Or maybe that's how, I'm not sure what's happening there, but you can click on the map and add neighborhoods, or you can click on neighborhoods and take them away to further geo-target. So this is essentially how you would select the neighborhoods. And so right now I've selected, it says 5 neighborhoods, and that's 17,681 residents. So that's how you would geo-target by neighborhoods. Now here's something that's important to understand. If you're using the Nextdoor agency app, you have to sign up for Nextdoor for public agencies on the web. So Kirsten will send you, or Kirsten or someone on the team will send you an email invitation. You create your profile on the web, like on your browser, and then you can download the Nextdoor agency app. The Nextdoor app, which is for the residential side, will not work with your city credentials. You must use the Nextdoor agency app. Kirsten, can you make note of that and make sure we communicate, because that can really kind of mess people up a little bit. You can sign into the app. With that said, on the app, you will only get the listings of neighborhoods in your district. You won't see this little map. If you want to do the little map geo-targeting, you're going to have to do that on the website. Once you post on Nextdoor, your posts, along with other council members and folks who have access to Nextdoor, will show up on this page, which is your view of the posts. When you post on Nextdoor, it shows up in all of the Nextdoor neighborhoods in which you have targeted the post. So this message was sent to 8 neighborhoods, and I can click on this. It was sent to these neighborhoods in Denver, and it will show up in the news feed of all of those Nextdoor members' neighborhood networks. I'm sorry, that's a mouthful, but I'm trying to be technically accurate here so you understand it. And so let's go. I'm going to just come to a better example. So this message here, this was actually something Kirsten posted. It was 5 days ago. She's got a good image. Images drive more engagement. This was citywide. Denver issues new COVID-19 restrictions effective 10 p.m. on Sunday. Concise, very accurate subject line that will gather people's attention. So she's got the details of her message here. She links to more resources for people to get that information. And it's really important, couple things here. Strong subject line, thorough message that's not too long but covers all the major points, with a link to more details if people want to go. And it looks like there was 102 comments, and she closed the discussion. And it actually said this thread is now off topic and has been closed, which is not unusual for the topic of COVID, right? So she gave everybody a chance to have the message. She closed it. She managed the community meeting and said, folks, we need to move on. And so she closed the discussion. She initiated it. The discussion happened, and she closed it. Here, you can also see that there was 108 people reacted to it, and there were 60,000 impressions. And impressions are close to like total people. Somebody could look at it a couple times. So you could estimate that about 60,000 people in Denver saw this message on Nextdoor. A couple things to know here that I'm just going to open this up here. If you wanted to, you could click on Mike's name here, hover over, and send Mike a private message. Also, if Mike is being rude or mean or violating Nextdoor's guidelines, you could click on his profile and click this little drop down here and report Mike to Nextdoor. And our team will take a look and make sure he is abiding by Nextdoor's guidelines. Okay. Uh-oh. All right, I didn't do something too bad here. Hold on one second, everybody. Sorry about that. The other thing I wanted to show you when you're interacting with folks is you can, for example, looks like folks, let me come up here. It looks like all these have been, here we go, here's one. So you can click reply to, I guess, I can't pronounce her name, Inga's comment, and it will reply in line. You can also like their comment to let them know you heard it. There's different ways you can interact with folks. And if you need to, the way to close a discussion is by clicking on the drop down here, and Kirsten's already done it. but I could reopen this if I wanted to, but you would just click close discussion, and that closes the door to your community meeting. If you wanted to edit your post, you could simply click on edit here and you can make changes to it. But know that your change only reflects from the time you make it. Some other technical things to know how to do. If you want to change your title or make changes to your account, you would click on settings. And under settings here, you can control your notifications. By default, you will get copies of posts from everybody on the page. If you don't want to get copies, email copies, you can uncheck this. You should all allow replies to my post. That gives you an email to remind you to respond if you want to. However, you can turn that off if you want to. You are also able to turn off private messages, but I recommend you don't, because that allows Nextdoor members to ask you a question not in front of all of their neighbors, right? And if you're offering resources for families or something along that line, you want to kind of have that avenue for communication. You can, however, if you want, direct people to call your office or to email directly. That's your choice. I want you to know you can make these choices here. And then under account, this is where you can update your title. Like if you get married, change your last name, if that's what you folks are doing, however you want to do it, or change your password. And if you want to change your profile picture, you click on the top here, top right-hand corner, choose view profile, and you would hover over add photo and you can upload a new picture. And that's it for the basic overview of how Nextdoor works. There is a detailed manual that we just updated, and actually I did it in time for this training, which I've emailed you that, Kirsten, haven't I? Is that correct?
Yes, and I have it in the slides linked as well.
Great. And so you'll be able to refer to that. If you do need help, there's two places you can go. You can click on the Help Center here. So if I click Help Center, and let's just say that I forgot how to close a discussion. When it opens up, you just choose close discussion and how to close the discussion post, right? So if you have a technical question, come and ask here first. Secondly, we have an agency community, and the community is where you can give us feedback about things. I liaise with the CDC, so I'll post updated guidance. In fact, I have to update the guidance they put out yesterday of how masks actually protect yourself. And what I do here, and if you click on this post, is I actually write suggested contact based on input directly from the CDC that you can share with Nextdoor. With your members. And there's tons of content that I've written or partners have written that you can find in what's called our content library. So there's examples here on how to encourage kindness, or what to do for hurricanes before, during, and after, emergency preparedness, and that kind of thing. So there's lots of content here that you can use to share. Okay, I think that does it for my general overview of what I wanted to share with everybody. I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back. Did I stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like
that's it for my part.
We did get another question too. Sure. How many sessions can be logged in at one time? Is there a limit to that?
You mean of like the same user profile?
That's what I'm guessing.
Yes. I don't think we restrict that, but you wouldn't want, like if you have, so if you're the council member and you've got like your director of constituent services and your director of communications, each person should have their own profile, right? I think I've seen a lot of like city councilors just want just the councilor posting. But I suppose you could do that, but the only problem with that I don't like is you need to make sure your password is secure and not easy enough so 3 people could remember it. You don't want your page hacked into, and if your password isn't strong enough, our system will force you to make it strong or do 2-factor authentication, which is hard for 3 people to share, right? So I would recommend each person have their own user profile and communicate as who they are. Maybe there's your persona that they'll primarily communicate, but yeah, that's a tough one. my recommendation is to create, if there are 3 people, 3 user profiles, and everybody communicates as who they are.
Sorry, Ben Chavez, City Council District 3. It's just that, I do all our social media, digital marketing, but, let's say, I have the app on my phone if I need to post something quickly on the go, or if I'm on my desktop, but then also there's the council person, that she would be able to have access to it as well. And we all have, all of our staff has dual 2-factor authentication on, because Facebook requires it, Instagram requires it, because we have verified profiles.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just like, we want, I don't know, I guess for marketing purposes or just the way that it looks.
Yeah, if you have it on if you're using the Nextdoor agency app on your phone and you got it open on your desktop, you're totally fine.
Okay.
If the council member also has it, I think that's fine. My concern earlier was I didn't want like 5 different people having it because it gets hard to manage. But I think in your case, you're good to go.
Yeah, I've never ran into any issues with that. So.
And then also, for example, let's say if I go on vacation, then one of my coworkers could do it as well. That's the only reason why I'm asking.
Sure. You should be fine. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, to just wrap it up, thank you to everyone who's stuck around with us. I just wanted to talk about next steps to get our elected officials onboarded onto the platform. So following today's training, you'll receive an email and we'll have a survey. The first question will be to opt in for an account. So if you'd like to post on behalf of your office, we can get you set up. If you don't have the bandwidth to do it, I know for elected officials or for city council members, we're going to have a city council body account as well. So that's another option. And then once we get all the survey results in, we'll be following up with a separate email with instructions, and then an invitation from Nextdoor will follow that shortly after. And then today we'll share the slides and all the resources that were highlighted today. And then just a quick rundown of what you're going to see when you create your account. We did create kind of a mock account using District 1 as kind of our example for City Council. So this is kind of our preference for how we are going to set up the account. So if you're a City Council member representing yourself, identify your position, your official title, and then first last name. Nextdoor has found that you'll get more engagement if you use your name and also your headshot. And then if you're a staff representative posting on behalf of the elected officials, please indicate that in your title as well with your name and your headshot, so that everyone knows that you're representing yourself on the platform. And we'll outline this in some instructions as well. And then this is just what it looks like when you build your profile. So you can see here District 1, that's where they can go in, upload their profile image and biography. And then you can see if they'll have access to the District 1 area on the map. So just a quick rundown. These are just resources that Joseph mentioned throughout the training today. I'm also going to add a link for the app that you can download, just so there isn't any confusion there between the Neighborhood Resident app and the Nextdoor for Public Agencies app. And that is it. To wrap it up, thank you so much for joining us. We can take a few more questions if we have any more. I appreciate you guys taking the time to join us.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, my daughter just came into my office and she's like, "Daddy, smell my breath." And I'm like, "Oh God, what am I getting myself into?" And she made chocolate chip mint cookies. So I'm going to peace out if there's no more questions in the next 30 seconds and go get a cookie.
Oh, I want one.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, everyone. There was one person that emailed or messaged me about the community organizer perspective, and I can't find it. I want to make sure I fully understand what you're talking about. So if you would kindly email Kirsten and she'll forward that to me, I want to make sure I didn't miss that message.
Yes, I see that here in the chat from Lisa Calderon. So